Arc 7, The Land of the Wolves. Chapter 31, A Talk Between Compatriots. Subaru's eyes widened as a strong arm grabbed him by the shoulders, making him turn around. The iron helmet staring his way, or rather, Ael's attitude, was rather unexpected. Subaru. Ignoring the force of the arm that had seized his shoulder was somewhat difficult. His intent to halt Subaru from banging his head against the wall and harming himself could be keenly felt. Al, you should stop that. Subaru, ah. Their gazes met, and a breath escaped as the words of restraint were repeated. Immediately, Subaru felt a pang of shame well up from the bottom of his stomach, as if he had been blamed for his eccentric behavior. It was as if he were a character in a game being made to run against a wall. Looked like it was exactly like that, including the part where he had not thought anything about it. Al, don't come crying to me if you end up an idiot after doing that. No, rather, it's because I couldn't leave you like that I came to stop you. Subaru, sorry for the inconvenience. Al, why so formal? Also, your voice is so raspy it's scaring me. With Al pointing out that Subaru's voice was surprisingly hoarse, he once again ridiculed himself. The one who had suffered from a complete mental breakdown and the one whose shameful behavior had forced him into this broken state of mind was none other than himself. It was natural. After all, it was none other than Rem who had told Subaru. Al, was it so painful for you to hear what that girl said? Subaru, hook. Al, oh, scary. Don't look at me like that. I'm gonna get nervous if you keep staring at me looking like that. Subaru looked up as if he had been hit by a bullet, meanwhile Al shrugged his shoulders as if jesting. His glare had caused Al to step back, but Subaru closed the distance between them, and directly tackled Al's earlier statement. Subaru, were you listening? Al, I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, you know. You just happened to be in the middle of an important conversation when I went to call you, bro. I just thought it'd be wrong to interrupt. Subaru. Al, even if you look at me with those distrustful eyes, I ain't lying. Well, after that, bro, you started walking like it was the end of the world, so I got worried and followed you. And sure enough. As he said this, Al pointed to the front part of his helmet. And as he had expected, his fears were right on the mark. It was not like Al was paying particularly close attention, but it was more that Subaru's desperation was clear as day. The pain from his forehead, which he had been hitting right at the spot Al had pointed at, came back, causing Subaru to cast his eyes downward awkwardly. Subaru, Rem. Al, whom? Subaru, that's right, what happened with Rem? I mean, after she talked to me. Al, whoa, don't tell me the shock you got because of what that girl said made you lose your memories? Please give me a break. If you get amnesia, bro, I'll lose my only buddy. Al answered Subaru's question while fiddling with the metal clasp of his helmet with his hand around his head. Unfortunately, what Al had feared would happen had already come to pass. That said, for Subaru it was something equally grave compared to amnesia, so it was inevitable that his mental balance would be disturbed. Perhaps seeing Subaru's anxiety in his expression, Al prefaced with, "Don't worry about it. Al, even after you turned pale, you were still giving decent answers, bro. So I think the girl didn't suspect anything, yeah?" Subaru, I see. After receiving Al's guarantee, Subaru felt the faintest of the faintest senses of relief. Apparently, Subaru's disgraceful behavior had started only after he had left Rem's presence. If he managed to keep up appearances around Rem, he would not have worried her. In any case, Subaru, Al, about what you just said. What did you mean? Al, just said? Subaru, about understanding my feeling of wanting to die, or something. With his hand on his aching forehead, Subaru asked the truth behind Al's words. Al, I understand the feeling of wanting to die. But no matter how many times you do that, there's gonna be no end to that sort of thing. The statement that he understood the feeling of wanting to die, and that there was no end to it, no matter what one did. To be honest, he thought that it was not an expression that would bother him much. But at the same time, it was an expression too meaningful to be telling Subaru in this situation. Rather, that statement seemed as if Al also wished to make Subaru believe that he perhaps knew about Subaru's peculiarity, his authority. Al. Oh, that. Subaru, yeah, that. It was. It was a very meaningful thing to say. You know something about it, right? Subaru sent Al a gaze shrouded with suspicion. Even if he strained his eyes, he was unable to peer into the eyes and the emotions hidden behind the cold steel helmet. And with that, his expression and eyes hidden, Al snorted and spoke. Al, I don't want to say this, but I've been getting along in years, right? I've been in the same kind of mess as you, bro. I've even acted lame in front of a pretty girl. Subaru, ah. Al, what's with that ah? Stuff like making a big fool of yourself and then wanting to dice a road any man has walked. If you ask me, even at my age, I do it quite often. When I do it, the princess looks at me like I'm a bug. With a chuckle, Al patted Subaru on the shoulder and gave him a lesson typical of a senior. Taking in that content and his demeanor, Subaru stared back at Al, trying to determine if he was being deceptive or serious. Al, what's up, bro? Subaru, no, it's nothing. However, even if Subaru attempted to uncover Al's true intentions, he would be incapable of doing so, as his view was obstructed by black iron. Till this moment, he had always dismissed Al's outfit as nothing more than one of his eccentricities. But when confronting him, attempting to ascertain his true intentions, he became aware that it was a protection much more potent than expected. But, at the same time, he also reflected on getting too nervous. Subaru, there's no way he knows, huh? It was just a coincidence that Al's comment had caught Subaru's attention. If Al knew about return by death, he would have tried to show it to Subaru in a way that was easier to understand. The very existence of that authority, of return by death, was a perilous affair. Were he to be aware of it, he would not keep himself from alluding to it, much like Roswell. Simultaneously. Subaru, I guess not everyone who gets summoned to another world gets some kind of power. He was not in the know regarding the details of Al's situation, but he thought it safe to assume this. Because, if Al possessed some kind of special power dwelling inside him, it seemed to him that the loss of his left arm could have been prevented. For example, if Subaru were to lose one of his arms in similar fashion, then he could utilize his authority to prevent the loss of his left arm before it happened, by Subaru, returning? With that thought in mind, Subaru stared at his left arm intently. It was merely hypothetical, but very possible. In the first place, the only reason Subaru had been able to survive with all his body parts intact so far, was because he had been able to make full use of return by death. Many times, among the loops in which he had been robbed of his life, he had suffered the loss of an arm or a leg. Had he been able to survive without return by death, he would have been plenty able to live with missing body parts. Subaru had decided that he would never fully rely on return by death. But then, to what extent should he rely on it? How many of his arms, legs, fingers, and eyes would he have to forfeit before he decided to rely on it? Above all, what if it was not his own limbs, but those of Amelia or Rem? In the Watergate city of Pristella, Subaru had not returned by death for the sake of Ricardo's lost arm. Today as well, he had not returned by death because Mazelda had lost her leg. Even though he knew that, via the use of his authority, he might have been able to procure better results. Even though he was aware that the number of those who had lost arms or legs, with the paths they had taken so far cut off, could be reduced. Subaru, I'm Al. Subaru, I'm a hypocrite. Conscious that the authority he had been bestowed with was a mighty one, he was unable to take a decisive step. Natsuki Subaru was far too impotent and selfish. Therefore, Subaru, Rem 2. Zua? Al, you're in a bad loop, bro. He had ended up allowing Rem to speak those decisive words. Right before he was about to fall into depression, Subaru's forehead was struck by a powerful finger flick. The strong pain brought tears to eyes, and while uttering wah, wah, he looked at Al. Al, oh, that made a pretty good sound. Wait, did I hit you right where you slammed your forehead? Sorry, I didn't mean to. Subaru, it's fine. Not, what the hell was that? Al, that was a finger flick. So, the questioning power shifts to me, and I'll ask the questions now. Al pointed the flicked finger at Subaru, whose surprise overrode the pain. Upon having that finger thrust at his nose, Subaru involuntarily backed away and kept his mouth shut. Then, Al continued with a listen. Al, how unsettled are you by that girl's words? It's a shame, just because she told you something. Don't you think so yourself? Subaru, well, Al, I don't want you to get woozy over something like that. I'm embarrassed to say this, but I got expectations for you, bro. Subaru, expectations? Subaru was simply surprised to be given a talk that he had never expected. Seeing Subaru's reaction, Al gave a deep nod and said, yes, that's right. Al, you remember that speech you gave at Pristella, right bro? Subaru, oh, yeah, I do, but Al, I'm pretty sure that, back then, I told you that broadcast would mean that you'd have to carry heroic reveries, bro. It had been a tense situation, with the city being assaulted by the Sin archbishops, and many people in dire straits. Subaru recalled the words Al had given him upon being requested to play a role in that situation, yet been unable to take the next step. Those were the heroic reveries. He was an existence burdened with the expectations and hopes of many people. He could not be allowed to lose. He was carrying the reverie of being the hero everyone wished for there to be. And at that time, Subaru responded way too relaxedly. It was the same as it had always been. Al, it's the same here. One person denies you, so what? It's not like it's going to change what you've done, bro, or turn your resolve inside out. Subaru. Al, don't break, bro. Go get him, bro, live up to expectations, bro. Al, who knew about Subaru's achievements in the Watergate City, patted him on the back. Neither Rem, who had forgotten everything, nor Lewis, who had regressed to an infant, and obviously, neither Abel, Flop, Medium, nor the people of Shadrach, were cognizant of Subaru's achievement. Priscilla also knew, but he doubted she would remember about it in the first place. Al, I haven't forgotten. And I'm sorry, I'm not letting go of it, bro. Subaru, not letting go of it, you say? Al, you've started it. I'm telling you, that's a reputation you gotta keep up until you die. Subaru. Subaru's breath was taken away yet again, due to Al's critical words. He knew that the broadcast in the Watergate City had spread not only to the people in that city, nearly consumed by anxiety and fear, but also to the rest of the world. He had to maintain that reputation until he died. And unfortunately, death would never come to Subaru. Therefore, he had no choice but to keep fighting. Subaru, forever. At Al's words, a voice leaked out of Subaru's mouth as he covered his face with both hands and shut his eyes. Echoing in his head this whole time were the deadly words spoken by Rem. Those devastating words had shredded Subaru's heart to bits, making him drown in his own stream of blood. Rem, because you're not a hero. Subaru, I've been relying on a single thing, Rem said, all this time. Rem, because you're not a hero. Subaru, Rem believed in me, and that's why I didn't falter. It was the same in Sanctuary, in Pristella, in Pleiades Watchtower. Rem, because you're not a hero. Subaru, Rem woke up without her memory, but I was still happy. I'm one step closer to getting it all back, and this is the time when I need to hold on the hardest. Rem, because you're not a hero. Subaru, those were the magic words that roused my spirit. He was a hero, Rem had told him so. They had stopped Subaru from giving up on everything and running away. They had not allowed his knees to buckle because Rem had fallen into slumber. They had let him challenge the obstruction of the sanctuary and the difficult problems at the mansion. They had played a role in his efforts to save the Watergate City of Pristella that had fallen into enemy hands, and they had rocked the soul of a Natsuki Subaru that had lost his memories and enabled him to conquer the Pleiades Watchtower. They were Rem, because Subaru-kun is Rem's hero. Because of those words, because of that trust and support, he had been capable of making it to this day. To take those away, for Natsuki Subaru, that meant. Al, then, you just gotta get them back. Subaru, huh? With his face covered, Subaru was in the midst of drowning in a darkness too deep to be called the back of his eyelids when he gasped due to Al's statement, raising his face. Right in front of him was Al's face, causing him to take a step backwards. However, Al was the one to move forward this time, in a mirrored image of the previous scene. Subaru's back immediately made contact with the wall. He could not move back any further. As if to push Subaru, unable to retreat, Al extended his arm and blocked his escape. And then... Al, we're gonna get them back. Both that girl's expectations and your confidence, bro. Subaru, expectations and confidence. Al, you gotta maintain your reputation. You gotta fight. And if you can't afford to keep losing, then you got no choice but to keep on winning just like you wish. That's how we're going to win and get them back. Subaru. Al, the expectations and reputation you lost can only be regained with better results. That's something you two should know, because you've experienced it many times. Suddenly he brought his face closer and the cold iron helmet hit his forehead. However, Al appealed to Subaru so strongly and sincerely that the latter did not even notice that their foreheads were touching. This had bore a great impact on Subaru. Most importantly, Al seemed to have a point or two. Lost expectations and reputation. The most bitter of Subaru's memories was, of course, his blunder at the royal castle. At that time, Subaru had lost Emilia's trust and expectations, and his valuation amidst the royal candidates dropped. The reason why he had been able to regain their trust afterwards were his actions. For sure, not because he was banging his forehead against a wall in utter devastation. Subaru, am I an idiot? No, I am an idiot. Wasn't it like though nothing had changed from when he made that blunder at the royal castle? At that time as well, Subaru had attempted to disregard a massive hole by pretense of asking Wilhelm to train him in order to escape from the immense pain in front of him. But now, Subaru could not afford to be so weak. He had to protect Rem and bring her home. In contrast to that time, there was no one else he could turn to for that purpose. For Rem, there was only Subaru. And in order to reassure Rem, surrounded by anxiety and gone without memories, he could not display even a little bit of a pathetic appearance in front of her any longer. Even if Rem, who had forgotten everything, had stated that Subaru was not a hero. Even if the words that had so strongly supported Subaru's back were retracted by that same face and voice. Subaru, I'm Rem's hero. Yes, wasn't Natsuki Subaru's true nature to keep his head up? Al, got a tad of your energy back? Hearing Subaru's determination, the harshness vanished from Al's voice. Replying to his words with a yeah, Subaru directed his eyes towards Al from up close, and Subaru, it's gotten much better. But back off, move away. What the hell's up with this cave-don? Al, right. Bro's cross-dressing, and I'm a 40-year-old man missing an arm. Laughing heartily, Al pulled his hand from the wall and stepped back. Image. As Subaru's field of view opened up, Subaru felt as if not just what was in front of him, but he felt like he was able to expand his horizon much more. In all honesty, Al's words had only acted as first aid, and the fatal wound had not been closed completely. He was not sure that his legs would not tremble in case he met Rem, that he would not be afraid of her repeating her previous words once he regarded her once again. He had not been able to reach an answer thus far, as to how much and for what purpose he would exercise the authority named return by death. He was sure that even if he mulled it over in his head, he would be incapable of arriving at a conclusion until that moment came. But he could say it clearly. This prideful authority in Natsuki Subaru's possession was indispensable to materialize the heroic reveries that he must bear on his back. Henceforth, he was certain he would continue to be confused on the manner to deal with it in the times to come. Al, oh, right bro, I just wanted to ask. As Subaru stared downward at his hands in the process of renewing his mind, Al suddenly spoke up in an uncomfortable manner, his gaze directed toward Subaru. Subaru wondered about Al's attitude, as he had not shown any sign of reservation up till this point. Subaru, what's the big deal now? If you have something to ask me, ask. Al, then, I'll feel free to ask. What's your relationship with that Rem girl? Al uttered that question with his head cocked in puzzlement. The question was one that seemed weird to ask at this point. But it was only when Al asked this that Subaru realized that he had given no explanation. Al, she's your companion, bro, that you brought all the way to the Empire. She ain't that half-elf girl or that contracted lowly. On top of that, you're treating her like a wife, right? Subaru, I do that as a matter of convenience, and she herself doesn't like it. Al, but that girl's words are tearing you to pieces, bro, the hell's up with that? Al lowered his voice slightly and asked in a very serious manner. In response to his words, Subaru frowned and searched his memories to make sure that there was no acquaintance between Al and Rem, at least not in this timeline. In the first place, he had never even brought up the subject of Rem in front of Al. It was only natural that he did not know about her. But still, there was something peculiar about his question. The reason was probably Al's attitude as he made that inquiry. Al. His expression could not be seen. But he could feel the heat in his gaze. Subaru sensed that it was a sign of seriousness and urgency. He was bewildered by the unfamiliar sides of Al he had been shown in such a short period of time, the previous exchange included. He was his sole compatriot, one who had survived in this other world with his aloof, carefree, and unserious attitude. As he felt his impression of Al morphing within him, Subaru, Rem's one of our companions. However, she fell victim to the Archbishop of Gluttony. Because of that, she's gone from everyone's memories. She doesn't even remember herself. Al. So that's what happened. I see, that makes sense. Subaru, sense? With Subaru having simply stated the truth, Al put his hand on his chin and nodded repeatedly. Subaru's head tilted due to the words that had leaked from his mouth, which prompted a right from Al. Al, there were a few things that were bothering me. It was supposed to be a girl I didn't know, but it looked like a girl I did know. It was kinda asserting itself like the small bone of a fish stuck somewhere. Subaru, you don't know her, but you know her. Are you talking about Ram? Al, oh, yes. Al's voice fluttered as Subaru blinked at the unexpected connection that had popped up. But that was enough to convince Subaru of Al's attitude. Thanks to everyone in the Amelia camp, he was well aware of how someone would react when one of the two, Ram and Rem, were to be forgotten. Even Roswell and Frederica, who had known her for a long time, had completely lost track of her existence until laying eyes on the real Ram, and once they met her face to face, they had never doubted the fact that she and Ram were twin sisters. Aside from their personalities and qualities, Ram and Rem were really very similar. No, surprisingly, as of late he found himself wondering that they might be similar in nature as well. Anyway, he now understood what Al's strange feeling had been. Knowing Ram, it would be confusing to see a Rem who looked exactly like her. Subaru, but I've never heard of you and Ram knowing each other. Al, it's not like we know each other. We ain't really acquaintances, it's just like, we got a bit of a connection, somehow. It's not so much that we know each other. Twin sisters, huh? So you wanna reunite them? Subaru, that's right. The top priority was to reunite Rem with Ram. After that, Subaru's main goal was to bring Rem back to where she belonged, and have everyone in the Amelia camp, along with him, welcome her. To do so, he could not afford to lose Rem's trust. He must do whatever it took to regain her trust and get her to take his hand. Al, okay. I'll help you, bro. Subaru hardened his fists as he once again focused on the big goal, when Al, still at his front, having mulled over the circumstances that had been relayed to him, nodded and spoke those words. Unintentionally, Subaru let out a dumb-sounding "eh?" Al, bro, did you just make the dumbest squeal ever? Subaru, leave me alone. I mean, what did you say? Do you want to help? Help who? Al, I'll do it for you, bro. And I'm sure the princess is gonna have a lot of stuff to say about that, but she can do whatever she wants with that. Anyway, I've decided that I'm gonna support you. Subaru. Al, but I only got one arm's worth of shoulder to put into it. Subaru, that's not funny. He'd stated that with annoying enthusiasm, and Subaru was puzzled even as he replied swiftly back. That was probably true. He did not know what in the world tugged at Al's heartstrings. Subaru, because you know Ram, that's why you're going to help me? Al, it's not like that. It's you I'm rooting for, bro. In any case, if you're gonna be a hero, the girl can't be left out. That's what I'm talking about. Subaru, it's not like I'm trying to be a hero. Al, you will be. Natsuki Subaru will become a hero. It was a way of interrupting that did not allow him to say no. It was a strong, quiet statement, and the heat that it held within scorched Subaru's heart. Al, just kidding. However, the intense fervor dissipated at the sound of Al's jesting voice. With Subaru at the mercy of the sudden change of situation, Al waved his hand and said, sorry. Al, but let's keep that kind of spirit, bro. It's better for lazy people like me and you, bro, to bluff our way out a little. As he said this, Al turned away and walked off with a jaunty gait. Lagging behind his stately steps, Subaru beckoned him. Subaru, Al. That just now was. Al, whoa, let's not go off on a tangent here. After all, as I recall, I came to call you to the conference hall, bro. I'm pretty sure the princess is gonna gimme a hard time. Subaru. Al, come on, let's hurry up. There's always gonna be a chance to talk it out. With that, Al turned his head and shrugged his shoulders, gesturing for him to start running. Subaru, hastened by his gesture, had no choice but to retract his concern. How much of what Al just said should be taken seriously, he did not know. Even so, declaring his willingness to cooperate outright gave Subaru considerably more energy to be optimistic. Even if it was forced, Subaru had to be optimistic. And so, he must keep his chest up, his back straight, and his legs wide apart as he walked. Subaru, Rems. Hero, because he had lost the person who saw him in such a manner. Heroic reveries, huh? As he dashed, a murmur echoed only inside his steel helmet. He closed his eyes, uttering in a voice that could not be heard outside, only to be heard by himself. And so, with his eyes closed, he let it echo in the darkness behind his eyelids. Al, I'll have you become a hero, bro. No, Natsuki Subaru. Chapter 32, The Path Onwards. How much time does it take just to bring one foolish commoner back? Do you think that the value of the time that flows by is the same between you and I? No, that's why I'm apologizing to you. Greeted by his master's frigid gaze, Al bowed his head in a sullen manner. As soon as he returned to the conference hall with Subaru, the aforementioned reprimand awaited him. The original purpose of his mission was to bring Subaru back to the meeting hall, so it was not unreasonable for him to be scolded for having an unplanned conversation. Not unreasonable, but... Subaru, Priscilla, please don't blame Elle too much. It's not Al who's at fault, it's me. Priscilla, I'm sure you two clowns were consoling each other over some trivial anguish. Your forehead is red, did you bash it against the wall or something? Subaru, do you have clairvoyance? You're so spot on, it's scary. Priscilla shot back at Subaru, who had come to Al's defense, with a comment as if she had seen it before. The scene was not supposed to be so common as to come to mind easily, but he couldn't help shudder at Priscilla's insight. Anyway, Subaru, it's like the conversation didn't continue without us. Priscilla, it is not facile to arrive at a conclusion. After all, are you not Abel's military strategist? Subaru, well, Being pierced by Priscilla's narrowed gaze, Subaru glanced at Abel. In response to his gaze, Abel, sitting on his seat, arms still crossed, paid no heed to Subaru's questioning look. Abel must have been reluctant to treat Subaru as a military strategist, but since he had stated such directly to Priscilla, it could be that he was unable to retract it. As a result, they could not conclude the meeting without Subaru. Subaru, aren't you shooting yourself in the foot by acting without thinking? Abel, you are the one who needs to regard the value of your words. Any great strategy can be treated as either wise or foolish, depending on how you choose your words. Subaru, you're regretting treating me as a military strategist, that's some nerve. Frowning at Abel's officious answer, Subaru sighed deeply. He then looked around at the people in the meeting room: Abel, Priscilla, Zicker, and Tarita, who had taken over as chieftain, and then closed one eye. Without Subaru and Al, they didn't think they could have reached a conclusion. Subaru, the conclusion you haven't reached is about cooperating with Priscilla? What was said before was that Priscilla had a collaborator. Abel, you seem to have the brains to keep up. Of course, I am talking about that. The one who gathers the most members of the 9 divine generals wins, remember? Subaru, yeah, we got to the part where the first's a pain in the ass for being useless. If he went unrecruited and became an assassin, there would be nothing they could do. On the other hand, if he were recruited, he would not contribute much to the situation. If this were a simulation game, he would be a troublesome unit. Someone that lacked charm even if turned an ally, all while becoming deadly poisonous if left to their enemies. Subaru, but it's about the final victory. It's not about Priscilla and the support of her collaborators. Right? Priscilla, Priscilla made a small sound in her throat as Subaru summarized the story deftly. For an instant, Priscilla's crimson eyes flashed with a look of curiosity that seemed unusual in Subaru's own eyes, a reaction that suggested that she was interested in someone else, and in addition to that, it was Subaru. I haven't done anything special, Subaru contemplated. Subaru, what? Priscilla, no, I thought you looked deflated in that guise, but you have made your return with a new look on your face and a new light in your eyes. On top of that, your blood circulation is a little better, so your appearance is slightly different. Subaru, are you complimenting me? Priscilla, you may jump in jubilance if such is your wish. Subaru, I won't go that far. The fact that she had not denied it must be a compliment in Priscilla's own way. Replying with a snort, Subaru accepted the praise for his change of heart. From Rem's own mouth, the words that had supported Natsuki Subaru had been repudiated. However, he was encouraged that this was not the time for his knees to buckle because of it. Subaru, well, if that's the case, then it was worth being late for the meeting. Priscilla, I see, the result of a conversation between clowns is superb. You are being so uncharacteristically friendly, Al. Al, boy, it's not unusual for a nice guy like me to be friendly to someone, princess. Priscilla derided him, and Al shrugged his shoulders as he replied. Subaru could not decide whose words were correct, Priscilla's or Al's. For Subaru, Al was the only person from his homeland, the one who patted him on the back and pushed him out of a dead-end situation. It was true that his image was not without its unsympathetic side, as he had been harsh to him elsewhere, and he treated any situation as someone else's problem. Subaru, I can forgive it if I consider it as an after-effect of spending so much time in a different world. Al, didn't you just say something really upsetting? Maybe I'm imagining things. Al tilted his head as if he couldn't make any sense of it, but Subaru let it slide. Neither the fact that Priscilla had changed her mind about Subaru, nor the fact that Al had contributed to that change of heart, were what was important. Subaru, what we need to do is settle the debate, and see how Priscilla's willing to deal with us in the future. Let's not go off topic. Abel, oh, I am sorry. That someone who gets sidetracked so easily became a military strategist. Subaru. To Abel, who narrowed his eyes in displeasure and retorted sarcastically, Subaru stuck his tongue out and ignored him. Then, turning to Priscilla once again, he urged her to continue the conversation. Subaru, so, what are you going to do? With or without the support of Priscilla and her collaborators, I'm sure Abel's still going to raise an assault on the imperial capital. Al, with or without the princess's support, the extent of the assault will be the same. Priscilla, it is that you clowns are so in tune with each other. Anyway, your assessment is correct. Therefore, for us to assist you in the future, I have raised a condition to Abel to serve as proof that he is worthy of the support. Subaru, condition? Priscilla, it is simple. One of the 9 divine generals must be on your side. To Subaru's frowning face, Priscilla presented the requirement as a matter of fact. Upon hearing that prerequisite, Subaru muttered 9 divine generals. It was not an absurd condition, definitely. In the first place, if one wished to mount a challenge in the battle to regain the throne, the acquisition of many divine generals was required beforehand. Priscilla was merely looking for that first step. In fact, it would be a very fortunate condition if they could get Priscilla on their side just by fulfilling the prerequisites for victory, right? Subaru, it's not exactly a condition to be jumping up and down about, is it? Abel, of course. As long as I remain unknowing of God's safety, there are no divine generals among the 9 who would follow me unconditionally. Additionally, there are not many eccentrics with an inclination to trouble themselves to fight a losing battle. Subaru, if they can't see even a small chance of winning, no one will come on board. As Abel described the tragic situation, Subaru also wrinkled his brow with a difficult expression. Abel's sad self-awareness if the Emperor's prestige was not enough for the 9 divine generals, he desired to get as much support as possible from Priscilla and her collaborators. At the very least, the presence of such a collaborator would have been a bargaining chip to persuade the 9 divine generals. At this point, Abel had only a few things to go on: his big claim that he was the true emperor, the people of Shadrach, and the military strength of the fortress city of Garel. Subaru, I wonder if they'll listen to us when we say we'll fight the empire with 1 city and 1 tribe. Abel, those working with Priscilla. If they rank as mid-level counts or higher, their names shall pose as good bargaining chips. Priscilla, I tell you, do not expect mercy from me. I possess a certain amount of generosity, but it is not meant for beggars. Priscilla, with her chin resting on her hand, easily trampled their feeble hopes. As they were already aware, there was no way she was going to change her opinion. Then, all they had to do was to directly challenge the conditions presented to them. Zikr, with all due respect, Your Excellency, perhaps we should turn to General First Class Cecilus for help? Subaru, Zikr-san, what are the odds of success? Expectations were placed on Zikr after those words, as heavy silence fell over the room. However, in response to Subaru's expectant gaze, Zikr shook his head and said, no. Zikr, as Your Excellency stated earlier, given the current balance and strength, anyone who considers cooperating with us is not thinking straight. Therefore. Subaru, therefore? Zikr, I am afraid we can only rely on people who don't think straight, such as General First Class Cecilus. Subaru, so Zikr-san thinks that person's nuts, too. Cecilus, who had only a dismal reputation, was hardcore enough that Zikr thought he could be brought to their side due to his craziness. However, if they really had no other choice, they may have to go for the first troublesome unit they could think of bringing over to their side at some point. Subaru, the question is, where is he? Where does that person usually live? Abel, that one usually lives in Arakia's house in the imperial capital. Subaru, I see, Arakia's, wait, why? It was said flatly, and Subaru's understanding of Abel's words was delayed for a few seconds. Even Priscilla scowled in displeasure at the outlandishness of the content. From what he had heard, Cecilus was the first, and Arakia was the second. Subaru, does that mean that this Cecilus guy and Arakia are lovers or something? If that were the case, the impression left by Subaru and the others who had repelled Arakia could not have been worse. Subaru and his team had successfully made enemies of both the first and second. However, Abel shook his head in response to Subaru's question. Abel, no, that is not so. Arakia is looking for an opportunity to kill Cecilus, but she cannot achieve such a thing if people around him are harmed every time she attempts to murder him. That is why I ordered Cecilus to do it. Subaru, ordered what? Abel, if it was going to happen anyway, he should stay in places where it's easy for Arakia to go after him. Subaru, I see. Even with a concrete explanation, their relationship was difficult for Subaru to understand. He did not understand the mentality of letting his own generals kill one another, and he also did not comprehend the idea of living in the house of someone who would try to kill oneself. First of all, Subaru, how can you live with someone who wants to kill you? After he asked that, he felt as if he had spoken something strange, but he was incapable of finding the answer to that odd feeling, and Subaru quickly forgot his question. Anyway, the fact that Cecilus usually lived in the imperial capital was now known. Subaru, so, the only way to get Cecilis on our side is to head to the Imperial capital. Hey, you sure you're okay to go all the way to the Imperial capital? Abel, of course not. With the current status quo, if I were to get close to the Imperial capital, it would be no different than advancing toward my own execution. More than that, I do not even know if Cecilis is in the Imperial capital after all. Subaru, then we're out of luck. When it came to matters of the Valachian Empire, and even military matters, Subaru's knowledge was useless. Though, since Zikr, who was also a commissioned officer, had been the first to suggest it, it could be considered to be one of the better ideas they could come up with. If that idea was rejected, Abel's path would be bleak. Subaru, yet this isn't the time to be in a stalemate. A dark and heavy feeling began to assert itself in Subaru's chest. It was like a bittersweet stagnation, a lump of helplessness that would not vanish even if he banged his head against a wall, something like an aftereffect of Rem giving up on Subaru. Because of it, Subaru had lost Rem's trust. He had to get rid of this stagnation as soon as possible and regain her trust. In order to do so, every second of time spent at a standstill was regrettable. Abel, there is a way. However, the gnashing of Subaru's teeth was halted due to these words of response from Abel. One eye closed, Abel turned to face Subaru, the latter looking upwards as if he had been struck, and spoke. Abel, cease with that pathetic face, I am sick of seeing it. I have an idea. Subaru, sorry, but my face is at the limit of what I can do with the character maker, without wailing for it. I don't care about the inequality between such faces. What do you mean you have an idea? Abel, it was part of Zikr's idea. I shall adopt some of it. Zikr, some of my idea? I would be honored, but that is. With furrowed thick eyebrows, Zikr displayed confusion upon hearing that his opinion would be utilized. Subaru was just as confused as Zikr. In the first place, Zikr's idea had been to recruit Cecilis, the first. As long as they could not go to the Imperial capital, they would be forced to reject that idea, and he thought that there were no other parts that could be used, outside of that. To Subaru, who thought so, Abel exhaled via his nose, Abel, I do not possess a chance to talk to Cecilis, but Zikr also stated. If there is someone else who does not think straight, there is a possibility. Zikr, hook. Impossible. Your Excellency, that is dangerous. Please reconsider. Subaru, eh? Abel's bold words were met with fierce opposition by a pale-faced Zikr. Zikr's fierce determination made Subaru's eyes dart back and forth, and he was surprised to see what was going on. Zikr seemed to have an idea of what was going on, but this seemed illogical to Subaru. From the way the conversation was flowing, it seemed as if he were going to talk to someone crazy. Subaru, is there anyone crazier than that General First-Class Cecilis no one likes? Zikr, I would not label them crazy. But that person is too dangerous. Well, I get what you're saying, Afro General, but from the way the conversation's going, it's one of the 9 divine generals, right? If you leave them out, is there anyone else you can count on? It's not a situation in which you can be picky. Zikr, that is true, but... Subaru and Al spoke to him from both sides, and Zikr quieted down with a reluctant face. Having seen the good-natured Zikr in suffering made Subaru feel as if they had done something wrong. Rather, the problem lay with Abel's personnel management, which had placed people in key positions that Zikr could not help but anguish over. This was an example of how appointing people based on their abilities alone could lead to such tragedies. Subaru, in that respect, Labunica was run pretty well. Basically, I've never come across a big shot who was a jerk. No, there was that old man who said bad things about Emiliatan, but... In hindsight, that was also part of a statement born out of excessive fear of the Witch of Envy. At the time, Subaru was a foolish hero who did not understand such circumstances and took on the challenge, equipped only with recklessness. Now, were he to encounter an identical situation, he would be better equipped to challenge it. Of course, the option of not challenging someone over Emilia because of her bad reputation was not present for him. Subaru, so just who's the cause of Zikr-san's suffering? Abel, what is with that foolish wording? Abel responded to Subaru's question with a resentful look on his face. Abel, to answer your question, it is Yorna Mishigyr, based in Chaos Flame, the Demon City. Subaru, Yorna Mishigyr. Despite the unfamiliar name of the city, the person's name was familiar to Subaru. Yorna Mishigyr was one of the 9 divine generals mentioned in the list, and he believed her nickname to be. Subaru, she's called the Flamboyant, something like that, right? Al, you're good, bro. I don't know how you managed to learn it in one shot. Subaru, I like to memorize the nicknames of executive-level characters in manga and such. That said, this Yorna person is Zikr-san's. As he said this, he glanced at Zikr, and Subaru became speechless. Because Zikr's face had gone pale, now covered by his hands. Zikr, the seventh of the 9 divine generals, General First Class Yorna Mishigir. Subaru, is she that dangerous? I thought the name was feminine, but... If his impression was correct, she would be a woman feared even by Zikr, renowned as the womanizer, who acted like a gentleman even towards a Subaru only dressed as a woman. He could not even envision what kind of spectacle was going to come out of her, but... Zikr, she is beautiful. I am sure everyone can agree on that, not just me. However, General First Class Yorna has a small, no, not a small, rather, an inexcusable problem. Subaru, well, what's the problem? Zikr, it's insurrection. Subaru and Al, eh? Subaru's and Al's voices overlapped with Zikr's, as the words spilled from his mouth. To Subaru's dismay, who was suspecting that his ears had heard that wrong, Zikr covered his face with his hands and continued in a trembling voice. Zikr, General First Class Yorna Mishigir has rebelled many times and threatened the reign of Emperor Vincent Valakia. Subaru, you can't put someone like that in the position of army general. Subaru's angry voice echoed through the conference hall for a second time. Priscilla, this affair seems to have been settled. After a while of listening to the ridiculous information about the 9 divine generals, and after Subaru's angry shout, Priscilla adjudged that she had witnessed the conclusion of the discussion and opened her fan with a snap. Honestly, it was a conclusion Subaru wanted to object to, but... Abel, there is no other option. As of now, the only one among the 9 divine generals who might join us is Yorna Mishigir. Subaru, didn't she rebel against you because she didn't like you in the first place? Zikr, no, actually, that would not be entirely true. It is impossible for me, at least, to know what she is thinking. Subaru, if Zikr-san says as much, then it must be true. At the words of the trustworthy Zikr, Subaru had no choice but to retract his doubts. And Abel, having heard this, sniffed disapprovingly and spoke. Abel, what is it with you and your willingness to listen to Zikr's opinion? Subaru, even if the opinion's the same, who said it is important? Do you think you have more credibility in my mind than Zikr-san does? Abel, I see. But what happens if Zikr dies? Subaru, even though it's a thought experiment, I'm going to kill you. He cursed at Abel for saying something so disturbing. Taking Zikr's loyalty into account, if Abel ordered him to do it, he may seriously commit suicide. Subaru was doing everything in his power to prevent such an incident from happening. Anyway. Subaru, silly stuff aside, Chaos Flame, where is it? Is it far from Geralt? Abel, not in terms of location. That is another reason as to why it is an appropriate place to head towards. It is located southeast of here, and south of the Budheim jungle. Subaru, I see, indeed. Having been shown the location on the map on the desk, Subaru was convinced by Abel's explanation. The location of Chaos Flame lay south of the jungle where the people of Shudrak lived. The distance was larger than that between jungle and Geralt, but it was a destination far more realistic than the one till the imperial capital or the land further west. Subaru, and then there's why it's called the Demon City. Priscilla, rest assured, foolish commoner. It is not because of a reason that shall crush your minute heart. It is a city where many races have lived in chaos since ancient times. Valakia is home to a much wider variety of races in comparison to Lagunica, but Chaos Flame is a particularly eclectic mix. Subaru, in chaos, and it's the Demon City. Once that was said, the fact that the word chaos was connected to the city said to be in chaos made a lot of sense. Given that this was another world, it was probably just a coincidence. Abel, in the Demon City, I shall add Yorna Mishigir, the 7th of the 9 divine generals, to my army. I am certain you shall be able to open your heart, when that comes to pass, Priscilla. Priscilla, that is fine. I am quite magnanimous. I shan't add conditions afterwards. Subaru, I thought you said something about generosity being out of stock earlier. No, never mind. With Priscilla's glare falling on him, Subaru immediately withdrew his unnecessary remark. And so, once the plan was properly settled upon. Abel, please take me with you. Subaru, Tarita-san? Suddenly, Tarita stood up and pleaded with Abel. Tarita had been seated in place of Cunat during the meeting, but she had never spoken up before this moment. She was probably confused by the fact that she had to suddenly take over as chieftain, but even now, her face had a deep sense of urgency plastered on it as she stared at Abel. In response to her plea, Abel's dark eyes narrowed. Abel, what shall you do? You have inherited the title of Shadrakian chieftain from your sister. Regardless of your confidence, that will not change. Tarita, I know. I can't refuse the position that my older sister has given to me. But I'm not strong enough to lead the Shudrak. Tarita looked downward as she bit her lip and stared at her hands. In her empty hands, what she clutched was probably the same thing that Subaru held in his heart, that was, the sense of helplessness that tormented her. Tarita, because I need a chance to carry the position of chieftain with pride. Abel. Is that what you are looking for in traveling to Chaos Flame? Tarita, yes, it is it no good? Tarita's voice lost some of its power, as if she had lost confidence in herself after saying that. However, Subaru could understand the anxiety that Tarita was feeling, and what it really was. After the sudden change in chieftains, Tarita had been forced to play a major role, but she was not sure that she held the power befitting said role. So, what she sought was a successful experience. With her own hands, she would seek results sufficient to convince herself, and a success story that would let her deem herself worthy. It was the same thing that Subaru was looking for right now. Subaru, Abel, I agree with her. Even if she succeeded Mazelda-sen with such a mindset, I think Tarita-sen wouldn't be able to fulfill her potential. Abel. Subaru, besides, we're going to need an escort or ally along the way anyway, right? We know what Tarita-san's capable of. We're friends who rode into town together in women's clothing. Tarita, Natsumi. He had rephrased it somewhere in the middle of it, but he declared what he wanted to. Tarita appeared to be very impressed by Subaru's decision to side with her. He was painfully aware of her hard work. Therefore, he wanted to be on her side. Abel, what shall the Shudrak do while you are gone? Tarita, I will let my sister take over for a while. Kuna and Holly will be assisting her a lot. To protect Garel, we can't move too many people. Abel, so you thought about that much, whilst keeping quiet? Having listened to Tarita's unrestrained answer, Abel assessed her thoughts. Then Abel tapped his temple lightly with his finger. Abel, only if you are heading for Chaos Flame. Of course, as long as I am meeting with Yorna Mishigir, my presence is essential. But we shall not mount an attack. Subaru, at most we can only take one escort. Abel, then I shall add you, Tarita. The rest. I've been listening. In the middle of Abel's sentence, the door was thrown open with great force, and a figure stepped in with vigor. It was Flop O'Connell, the good merchant who had unabashedly referred to the Emperor as his new friend, and who had no fear of the impertinence of interrupting said Emperor's words. Flop snorted, as he held the gaze of everyone in the room to himself. Flop, Miss Tarita, I'm very impressed with your spirit in volunteering for such a difficult role. I think it's great that you're finding your own way to tackle a big role out of the blue. Tarita, thank you very much, Flop. Flop, I'd like to make a suggestion to keep you and Village Chief Kuan safe on the road. I think it'd be a good idea to take my sister, Medium, with you. Finger held high, Flop asserted forcefully. Subaru almost unintentionally nodded in agreement because of his vigor, but upon examining what he had stated, it was a rather abrupt suggestion. Subaru, so, what's on your mind? Flop, yeah, I guess that's the question. Now let me give y'all my reasons for recommending Medium. First of all, she's skilled, and then she's charming. On top of that, she's a smooth talker. Subaru, smooth talker. Flop, she speaks pleasantly and clearly, so your chats while traveling won't be lonesome. She's not shy, so she can get along with anyone. What do you think, isn't she a gem? Flop, white teeth on display, praised his sister, but 2/3 of his confidence selling points referred to Medium's people-pleasing nature, and the only real selling point was that she was skilled. In fact, Subaru had confirmed that this one point was accurate, however. Subaru, but, have you talked to Medium-san about it? Flop, no, I haven't. But I'm going to tell her now, so it's okay. Subaru, is this okay? It was no travel consultation nor a promise of fun. Although she would be thrown into a role where her life would be on the line, would discussing it with her later work out? If this were to cause a rift in the relationship between the siblings, it would indeed be painful for Subaru. However, he was afraid that he could picture them laughing and being okay with it. Subaru, assuming that Medium-san's okay with it, Abel, what about you? Abel. I have witnessed that she possesses the right skills. If she performs her role, I have no objection. Flop, then you can rest assured. My sister's one who basically gives her all to whatever she's told to do. But be careful, she doesn't get too worked up if she's not told to. Putting his hands on his hips, Flop laughed gaily, ha ha ha. It could be inferred from the way he'd stated that, and from Abel's attitude. This time, Flop would not include it in the group that would accompany them to Chaos Flame. Subaru, but Medium-san doesn't have to go with us, you know. Flop, don't be silly, husband Kuan, I have a goal. There's some revenge that must be done, that must be served. Subaru, oh, right. Those were the dangerous words that spilled out of Flop's mouth, but he knew that they were by no means dangerous thoughts, but rather directed towards an outrageous absurdity even the cheerful Flop could not forgive. Flop's goodness, which had gone unheard of by Subaru in this world, that was the reason why Subaru trusted him and had been able to spend time with him until today. Flop, it's the same for my sister. My sister and I have the same goal, and the same path to walk. If I abandon you, Wife San, and Village Chief Kuan here, I wouldn't be able to hold my head high anymore. Subaru. I'm going to cry. I'm going to fall in love with you. Flop, ha, that's a gut-wrenching thing to hear from you, husband Kuan, in that outfit. But you can't do that, because it'd be bad for Wife San. But I'll take your feelings. Even the way he dealt with it was cool, and Subaru could only admire it. Perhaps Medium would be willing to follow Flop's words. In other words, one of their companions in the trip to Chaos Flame would be Medium. Flop, Miss Tarita, be good to my sister. Hey, you got along well with me, so I'm sure you'll get along well with my sister. Tarita, why yes. Please take care of yourself too. Flop, HM? Yes, I'll do my best with Zickersan and the rest of the Shadrakians. Flop slapped himself on the chest as Tarita fidgeted and looked down. With a smile on his face, Subaru cleared his throat. Subaru, by the way, I'm Abel, I shall be leaving you behind. Subaru, hook. Abel, did you really believe I would say such a thing? When Subaru tried to confirm, Abel threw a feint in bad taste at him. Even though he was enraged by it, he reacted as if he wanted to be taken along, so Subaru did his best to hold back and kept silent by clenching his teeth. Snickering at Subaru, Abel prefaced his remarks with, unfortunately, though. Abel, you are already a bargaining chip. As long as it is imperative for us to append your name as Higure, no talks can be held without your presence. Subaru, I'll definitely punch you in the side of the head when all's done and dusted, but I'm a bargaining chip? Abel, the fall of Garrel was of your design. Those circumstances shall soon be known. I shall make sure that happens. Subaru, what? Not grasping the meaning of Abel's words, Subaru was bewildered. There was no doubt that the fall of the fortress city had been Subaru's plan, but he did not understand the advantage of going through the trouble of making it known. Basically, being underestimated was Natsuki Subaru's starting point. Priscilla, that there is someone else who can be utilized besides Abel, we must make her think so. It was Priscilla who answered Subaru's question in a straightforward manner. Hearing her words, comprehension slowly seeped into Subaru's mind. Priscilla, of course, that encompasses not only this foolish commoner. The people of Shudrak from the Budheim jungle and the defender of the fortress city of Garrel, General 2nd Class Zik Rosman, are likewise material for negotiations. But the best one would be Abel, the military strategist who assisted in bringing the city down. As I had stated, in the Empire, the strong are respected. It is not merely about brute force, but intelligence as well. Subaru. That was why Natsuki Subaru had value, Abel and Priscilla assured this. Honestly, from Subaru's point of view, it was a very complicated assessment. On one hand, he was bothered to be so highly praised. But on the other hand, it also seemed to be an overestimation. In fact, in spite of this high evaluation, Subaru had lost the trust of Rem and felt the ground under him collapse. No matter how highly he was regarded in the Empire, it was nothing compared against Rem's trust. For this reason, Subaru's heart was not moved by Abel and Priscilla's evaluation. However, Subaru, if I'm useful, that's fine. Use me well. In return. Abel, in return? Subaru, you'll definitely get the throne of the Emperor back. And you'll get us back home safely. Subaru firmly stated that this was the only thing he would not compromise on. Having heard this, Abel's eyes widened slightly, and then he let out a long breath. Abel, being told that is needless. That is what I am supposed to do. And so he answered. End of chapters 31 and 32, a talk between compatriots.